Hey guys, this is Alex
And Emily.
with the Beehive, and today we're going to do an introduction to the Revit 2020 interface. So when you first open Revit, you'll notice that you can open a new model or project or family on the left side. So we're going to want to do a new model. We're going to change the template file to architectural and then create new project. So when you first open Revit, you'll notice that you have a centralized workspace. All of your menus are across the top of the screen. On the left side, we have two different menus, one called the Properties Palette and one called the Project Browser. The Properties Palette is a great place to change a lot of the settings for your viewport, as well as a lot of the visibility and graphics of your content. The Project Browser is where all of your views and your model will be hosted. So this is a place that you can find your floor plans, sections, 3D views, anything like that. So if we start up here on the left side, you notice that there's a number of main menus, and then each menu has a lot of sub items below. The menu that we work in mostly for architecture is the architecture tab. And this is the place that you'll find all of the primary building elements, such as walls, doors, windows, etc.
So as we start a project, the first thing that you're probably going to do is draw just a basic wall in your project. Again, there are the settings in the properties palette here, and there'll be different family types that are loaded. It's going to depend on what the materiality of your wall is. We'll usually just do a basic generic to start. So this will be a foot example. The way walls work is they are attached to different levels, so you can control the heights of them this way. So it's usually default as level 1 to unconnected. So we'll probably change that to level 2 just to control the height of the project as we go. In order to, when you start drawing the walls, you'll notice there's a green bar at the top. And this controls if the wall is, if you're drawing based on the center line or the finished face interior or exterior. So when you start drawing a wall, most times we'll use exterior, and you can control this if you want to change it. You can hit shift and this will flip the direction that the wall is. So you just click one end and then click the second end to complete the wall. And it will continue from where you last left off. So just to draw a box here with 4 main walls, as you can see, it's snapping to and being smart about where you started and ended your last walls, wanting to make it as rectilinear as possible. So some of the other main components that you're gonna want to put in your project are doors and windows. These are also hosted in families, so different widths and heights. Those have to be placed in a wall. And again, moving your mouse from either side of the wall into your exterior will control which side of the door. If you place it and you want it to be exterior, you can use these kind of control points here to change that after the fact. Windows work very similarly. Again, they will have different family types, all controlled there in the properties manager there. Again, they have to be hosted in a wall. To place them, you just click in the wall once it's there. They also have the ability to flip. And then you can flip them to be either facing out or in the wall. Some other important features, again, all in the architecture tab, are floors and roofs. So we'll draw a floor first. Different types of this, again, we'll just use the most generic. You can either choose pick line or pick wall. So picking lines will automatically choose the walls or the interior of the walls to create this floor. This is called sketch mode, and as you can see, it has a red X and a green check mark there to finish. So we've completed the floor, so we'll hit the green check, and now we have a floor in the project. It will put a texture on that to show that the floor is there. And then to draw a roof, there are several options. We usually just do roof by footprint, but there's some other advanced options to use in the future. this will want to, right now it says we're placing it on the lowest level of the project, which we don't want to do. That would be the floor. So we will draw it on level 2. But again, we're in sketch mode, so there's some different options here. We can use a basic rectangle here since we have just a very simple footprint to follow. As you can see, there are little triangles along each side of these walls. That is indicating that those lines are controlling the slope of the roof. So you will need to adjust those as necessary when you're drawing it to set that up. And you can control this in the top bar by unselecting defining slope after selecting those lines.
So for this particular roof, I'm going to select the top and bottom lines, uncheck define slope, and then hit OK. So we're in our floor plan level 1 right now, so we can't see our roof. So one place that you can see your roof immediately would by clicking on one of your elevations. So these building elevations are automatically placed all around your building at the onset of the project. So if we go to our south elevation, we should be able to see our building here. In elevation or section, you will have these markers here. These will indicate what level you're building at. So these basically are how you host all of your elements, such as your walls, your roofs, and your floors. It is important to make a level for each level that will be present in your project. So if you were to have a 3rd floor and you'd like to copy this, you can go up here in the Modify tab, click Copy, click here, and then drag up to your desired height. So we'll say we want the 3rd level to be at 20 feet. So I'll go ahead and click to make that move. And then you'll notice we now have a level 3 here at 20 feet, in which we can host additional walls, floors to that level. So since you've seen the plan view and you've seen the elevation view, one of the best ways in Revit to visualize your model is to create a new view, which is a 3D view. So up here in the View tab is how you would create all of your new views, and they're under the Create portion of that tab. You'll see that the ones we've already worked with are the plan view and the elevation view. We can also create certain callouts on certain portions of our plan. We can cut sections through our building. And one of the most useful for visualization is the default 3D view. So here we're going to make a new default 3D view. You'll notice in your project browser here on the left side under 3D views, we now have that view that you can click on. Once we are in 3D space, you'll notice that you can see all of the elements that we just made in plan now reflect a 3-dimensional shape. In order to move around in your 3D view, you have a couple different options. So there's ways to do it with your mouse as well as on-screen tools. So this main one right here is your primary view cube, and that allows you to get any of the primary orthographic views of your building to quickly view it in a top view. You can spin around and view any of the sides or the corners with this cube very quickly. Another option on screen is to click on this button here where you have a number of different navigation wheels. So if I pull out the full navigation wheel and click on that there, you'll notice that I have a variety of different options, including placing a center point on the building. And then by pressing down with the right mouse, I'm able to orbit around wherever I place that center point there. I also have options for zoom, different options for panning, and walking around the model as well. If you don't want to use any of these on-screen options, there's always the ability to use the mouse. By using the middle mouse or pressing in the scroll wheel, you're able to pan around your screen. By holding in Shift and clicking on the right side of the mouse, you're able to orbit around wherever your fixed point is. So it looks like my fixed point is somewhere out there, and in order to change that, I can replace the center on my building, exit out of that, and then use Shift and right click to move around. Generally in Revit, whenever you're trying to select something, whatever you're hovering over with your cursor will turn blue. If there's something tricky that you're trying to get, like let's say I don't want this wall, but I'm trying to get the edge of that floor, the best option in Revit to use is to click the Tab key on your keyboard and that will cycle through all of the options that you can select, making it much easier to grab something that might be a little peskier to get, such as a door or a wall. Working through the tab function will also select groupings of objects, such as being able to select all 4 walls at the same time. So you'll notice in our little house here that we're missing some walls whenever we drew our roof. So since this element is going from level 1 up to level 2, we'd like to attach the top of it to the roof. Up here in the modify commands, this is where you can attach the top or the base of the wall. And then you need to select your host element, which will be our roof. And the wall will go all the way up and intersect with that roof. You'll notice we need to do the same thing here in order to make these walls continuous. When I'm selecting more than one object, I'm holding the control or command button in order to select an additional object with that little plus next to my cursor. And if you'd like to deselect an object, you can hold shift to deselect an object. So if I select all 3 walls and I'm attaching them all to the same host element, which is the roof, now I have all 4 of my walls going up nicely into my roof. So now that we have a default 3D view, we could go back to our floor plan level 1 to see the interior. The final primary view type that you'll want to create is a section. So we can go ahead and click on section. You'll notice we have the options for a wall section or building section. So I'll choose building section. And I'm going to cut that right through the window and where we have the pitch of the roof. So I'm going to click on one side, click on the other. You'll notice that the extent of the section is from one control point to the other. And then you also have your view depth. So these little drag marks show you exactly what will be shown in section. Then obviously your section marker is pointing towards where the section will be taken. So we'll go over here in the project browser. I'm gonna double click on section 1. And then I'm gonna right click on that section 1. You're gonna notice that we have a number of different commands. One of the most useful is that you're always able to duplicate a view. So sometimes you can duplicate a view to have maybe a dimension plan versus a plan that might have furniture in it, or just different views of the same content in Revit. But what I want to do here is go ahead and rename this to transverse section. So it's very helpful to always keep your project browser list updated with the names of your views so that you know where you're working with. So here in this section cut, you'll notice that we have a box around the view. That box can exist in every single one of the types of views that you produce in Revit. So if we go back to floor plan level 1, or I'll continue to show here in section. But this crop view, if you click on it, you'll notice it has a number of control points, and that will adjust what the content is that you're showing on your screen. So if you pull in one of these sides, it'll actually adjust what content you can see on screen. So this is a great way to crop your view if there's only a certain portion of your drawing that you'd like to export. Those controls live in the properties palette on the left side of the screen here, and they are under extents. So we can turn off the crop view with that checkbox there. By leaving it on, we can change the visibility and just turn it off and just know that that's what we're cropping to. Now we're gonna switch gears a bit and continue to talk about some of the elements in here and some of the other features that you'll need to know in order to set up a file. So under the primary architecture tab, you have a lot of different build elements under here on the far left. Going next to the right there, you'll notice we have a couple of different options for railings, ramps, and stairs. Once we have rooms in our building, we'll be able to place some different rooms and name them, and also be able to get different things like square footages and different takeoffs on those. So right now we have one room in this building. So I'm just going to go ahead and create a an additional 6-inch wall. I'm going to do wall center line and wait until I get a small triangle in the wall, and that is my midpoint. So right now I'm going to be bisecting this wall in this space in half. Then we'll need to get through that, so I'm going to go ahead and just place one more door here. Okay. So up here under the architecture tab, I'm going to go to room, and I'm going to place one room. I can see that it's placing automatically within this blue boundary. Then I'm going to place a second room in this other room. And the great thing about having these, so you have a room tag, which is here. And then when you click on the blue X, that's the physical room. And it tells you a lot of different data, such as the fact that room number 2 is 346.5 square feet. You can also get different things like perimeter, volume, and different things like that, which all help you design your project better. So in this small example, we don't have anything like columns, but I'm going to place a few in to show you another feature of Revit that really helps you keep your model organized. So under columns, we have 2 different types, structural and architectural. I typically use architectural since they do not have the ability to trace a load. So the structural columns are a little bit more complex in that regard. But if I go ahead and place a couple columns inside my building here, just say this building needs 2 rows. These columns I placed a little too low, so I'm going to go ahead and select one, hold Control, select the other. And then I'm going to use something called the Move tool under Modify. I'm able to click and drag this a set distance. You can either type it in or follow the annotation that pops up on screen. So now with my columns here, I'd like to set some grids. These grids will help to organize the structure of your building, which specifically more applies to commercial buildings, but is great to use in smaller projects such as this as well. So under grids, we'll use the default 1/4-inch bubble. We'll want to place this on the center line of our structure. So I'm going to go and click on the right side and pull this across. Then you're able to copy these. So I'm going to go ahead and copy from the center and midpoint of this column down to the midpoint and center of this column. I'm going to create 2 additional grids, one starting down here, working this way, one starting here, working this way. Oh. So you can either copy this one or you can click grid again and use it to create a completely new grid. I typically like to keep letters down the sides and numbers across the top. Different companies will use different conventions, but I find that this is the easiest in order to locate areas in your building. So
as you can see, when he picks one of them, it adjusts to the second one as well with the kind of dash blue line. So if you want to lengthen the grid lines or shorten them, it will automatically adjust both of them together as long as you align them in that manner.
Yeah, so all of my grids here are aligned. So in your viewport, no matter what view it is, you always have the option to hide out certain elements that you may not want. So in this case, I'll show you the section marker. There's a little cut gap in segments here, which you can click to pull this out of your content so that it's not confused as an element of your building. Another option for that, let's say we don't want to see our section at all. We can go ahead and left click on that to select it. And then we're going to right click and go down to hide in view and elements. Elements will hide just the selected elements. You can also hide out every single type in that category. So for this case, we'll just do elements. So that's a great way to clean up your view. You might say, well, I just hid that. Where did it go? Along the bottom, Emily is going to go over some of the stuff here in our view control bar along the bottom here.
Okay, so we'll just start there on the left. The first thing tells you the level of detail that your plan is going to show. So right now it's coarse, so it's just showing the bare minimum. If you change that up to medium or fine, it will start showing you a greater level of detail. Because we used all of the generic forms, right now everything stayed the same, but if you have layers to your walls, it will start to show that in that. The next option tells you what view you're looking at. So you can change it to shaded, and as you can see, the walls become post shade. This is really helpful as well in 3D views to put it in realistic and see some of the materials that are applied to everything. So for plans, most of the time, just leaving it in hidden line works the best. It's when you get to the 3D views that you can play with that a little bit more.
I'm going to go ahead and go to a 3D view here while we're on the different types of graphic styles. So underneath our 3D view, we're in a hidden line mode right now. One of the best features about Revit is that you can show your building in a variety of different ways very quickly. So here's sort of all the default materials. With a little bit of modification, you can use the realistic view. This might not look too realistic now, but you can go in and assign all of your materials that we'll cover in a future video. So I like to work default in hidden line since it's the most simple and gives you a nice level of detail. At the top of these options, we have graphic display options. This is where you can also change between these different views. This tab has a number of other features, including some of the different things such as show ambient shadows, which gives you a nice look on your building, similar to a Rhino Arctic mode. We can also cast shadows onto our building. Revit is geolocated, so under the lighting tab, we can change our sun settings, and you can physically set your sun to any location in the world or manually set it to certain angles. So you'll notice how you can pick certain places based on the internet mapping service, and then you can pick a date and time of day. So Emily's going to continue next to there, show you sort of how to turn these things back off or on as you may need them.
So if you click, so that one is the sun settings. So you can get to the option that we just had up of adjusting the sun from that view control bar to turn it on and off. This will show you where the sun is located. So this could be helpful in determining what the angles are going to be. Most of the time, and you can change it as well, most of the time we choose to leave it off just as it can be a little bit distracting, but it's really good for sun diagrams, things like that if you need. You can also turn the shadows on and off just by selecting the little blue ball there and just clicking it on or off. In order to turn ambient shadows off, you would have to go back into that graphic display options. Some of the other settings aren't used too frequently. You can really control the crop view and other things from the properties bar a little bit easier. If we do go back to that level 1 plan, when we hit the section marker, so now you hit it for a while, but now you need to view it again. You're going to click on the light bulb, and it'll put this pink frame around the window. That's telling you that you are in the hidden image or hidden element mode. And you can tell that the section is pink. That tells you that you hid that element. To unhide it, you're gonna right click and do unhide in view and then select elements as well. And then you'll need to turn the hidden element view off just by clicking on the light bulb again. And as you can see now in the view, the section marker is back.
So one of the last things we want to do here in this introduction video is just acclimate you guys a little bit to the Modify tab. Sometimes in Revit, what you put in, maybe something won't be lining up correctly, or you'll just want to change, maybe make a wall into multiple parts or different things like that to really give you the freedom of other programs such as like a Rhino or SketchUp. The majority of those commands live up under the Modify tab. So if we go back to the floor plan level 1, you'll notice under the Modify tab, you'll see some familiar tools and commands that would be similar to something like AutoCAD or Rhino, such as the cut, join, things like that. Revit has a number of other great tools in its arsenal, such as align, offset, mirror. All these tools are help you to be able to create different elements faster in your model. So if I can go ahead and use mirror pick axis, I can take a wall or a door, and I'd be able to reflect it over any axis I want. Another great feature in the Modify tab is split element. I use this often for walls in order to create openings. So if I go ahead and click on that, you'll see it's going to bring up a little splice tool for my wall. Wherever you click, and then I'm going to go ahead and hit escape to deselect the command. Now this wall has two pieces, so I can open it up and create a hole in that wall. This reminds me to let you guys know of a quick nuance about rooms, is that rooms have to be in an enclosed area, so they have to have continuous walls around all sides. Now we just broke that wall. So the best way to fix that is to go back to the architecture tab and then use a room separator. So this line will just create the boundary, and I'm going to go ahead and place it in between those two walls. And you'll notice that my room is now enclosed. And what you can do with that in plan view is go ahead and grab it again, and we can hide that in view so it's not confused with the edge of the floor or any other elements we may have in our model. But that split element command is a great one for walls. Another thing that we like to cover initially is pinning and unpinning elements. So sometimes in Revit, certain things will be locked and you'll be trying to move them and it just won't work. So certain things like grids, once we have our grids established, we probably don't want to be really moving them around at all. And if we were working in a work shared model with other students or collaborators, we would definitely not want anybody to be able to move these around by accident. So under your Modify tab, you'll see this little push pin. So I've selected all 4 of my grids, and I'm going to go and click that. So now if I try to move this grid, it's going to say that it cannot move the pinned element. So this is a great way, once you know where things are going to be, to lock them down and make sure that you're not going to move something on accident and have to fix it later. So if I want to unpin these, I can go ahead and select this one. I'm going to use a right-click command called Select All Instances Visible in View. And that's going to give me all instances of the grids just in this view. What I can do now is go up here to the unpin, and that's going to allow me to be able to move these around again freely. A few of the other commands on the bottom of the Modify that you'll use very frequently are the move, copy, and rotate commands, as well as some of the things about trimming and extending to corner, and then trimming different arrays of elements. In plan, there's a couple of different things that are good to know. Also under this Modify tab, we have the measure between 2 references. So if we pick the inside of this column to this one, we'll notice that that's 19 feet. What it does not do is that it does not leave an annotation string. There's a separate tab called Annotate where you can find all of the different annotations. So this is a great way to measure the interior of your space. So I'm going to use aligned, so it'll match whatever the orientation is of the wall. By default, it's picking the wall center line, but I can certainly change that to wall face. So if I want to figure out the length and width of this room 1, I can click on this wall and this wall, get my dimension, and then I just need to click one more time outside of that in order to place it. And we can do the same thing for the width. So this is a great way to size your room. As I said before, the room tag itself, if you click on the room, that will also give you stuff like square footage, but to quickly get the dimensions, using some of the commands under the Annotate tab are definitely most useful. I think one of the last things we'd like to show you in this intro video would be the detail line and filled region commands also under that Annotate tab. A detail line is a line that is specific to your view. So if you place it in floor plan level 1, it will only appear in floor plan level 1 and not in any of the other views of your project. So if we go ahead and go here, I'll pick rectangle. I'll change the line style maybe to a wide line. And then in this room, I'm going to go ahead and place a box. Maybe this is representative of a dresser or a piece of furniture. It's something I might just want to put in to define a boundary for myself. So I did select wide lines, and you'll notice that they're thin right now. So Revit has two different viewing modes, and it's right up here on the top bar. This is called thin lines. I always work with thin lines on because it's a great way to know exactly where you're placing your elements. But if you turn it off, you'll notice that you're going to get some heavier lines of where you're cutting through your geometries, as well as if you define a line as being heavier, such as in these detail lines. So I'm going to go ahead around here, hold Control, and select all four. I'm going to delete those. And then I'm going to turn my thin lines back on. But you'll notice that keeping thin lines off is a great way to show your building for more of a presentation style graphic. I'm going to turn that back on. And then a filled region does the same thing as a detailed line. And you can choose to have a different line type on the outside. But for this one, I'm going to do invisible lines because I only want to be able to see the hatch that's going to live inside of these bounding lines. So if I go ahead and create this, maybe the dimensions weren't quite what I wanted, so I'll go ahead and select this, change this to 2 feet, and then I will change the length to 8 foot. And then still in the filled region boundary modify tab, I haven't finished editing my sketch yet. So I know that I want to put a filled region within these invisible line constraints. So I'll go up to the properties palette and you'll notice that there's a number of default filled region types. So I'm going to go ahead and pick diagonal up. That one's a little hard to see, so maybe we'll try another one. Solid black. So this is a great way to draw some different elements in plan that you might want to show up in your project without having to represent them fully in 3D. Emily, is there anything else you'd like to cover in the introduction video here?
I think that's just about it.
Alrighty, guys, thanks for watching, and we'll continue in the next exercise video. Thanks for watching.